sporadic violations of it, which are sort of indicative of every Syrian ceasefire that we've dealt with over the last 8 to 10 years. So that's not surprising. But the real issue is, will the Syrian Kurds actually be forced to displace hundreds of thousands of people to a part of Syria where they don't have homes, where they don't have jobs? Certainly, the Syrian Kurd leader, Muslim, who we've spoken to in the last couple of days, is not entertaining that thought. I mean, I believe the president is right that we should bring in international players here to establish the safe zone. Certainly, let's not fall back on what was taking place in the past to do that by force. I think there is a way to negotiate this and make this work for both people in terms of Turkey's ends and the Syrian Kurds ends. That's challenge number one in front of us. The second thing is in rest of eastern Syria, I believe that's a work in progress. In the introduction, we're talking about possibly the introduction of some more U.S. forces there to help with the defense of the oil fields. I believe what the Pentagon is thinking about is establishing a security zone in eastern Syria from the Iraqi border to a town called Deir ez-Zor, and as it snakes north to the Turkish-Syrian border, which would be a security zone considerably less than what we've seen in the past, probably about 60% of what we did in the past. And that would do two things. One is contain ISIS from reemerging, and two, protect the oil fields, and three, make certain that Iran doesn't take over eastern Syria. That, I think, is a work in progress. Those are decisions that the president has yet to make, and we'll see what takes place.
So you heard the president yesterday, I'm sure, General. He said, let someone else fight over this long, blood-stained sand. We're going to have to get your thought on that after this, because we are watching now as Lindsey Graham comes in, the senator and the head of the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Let's listen in.
McConnell. And the purpose of the resolution is to let the House know that the process you're engaging in regarding the attempted impeachment of President Trump is out of bounds. It's inconsistent with due process as we know it. It's a Star Chamber type inquiry, and it's a substantial deviation from what the House has done in the past regarding impeachment of other presidents. And one I can speak of very firmly is the impeachment of President Clinton. So what I want to highlight here, well, not this one. 2019, Congressman Al Green wanted to open up an impeachment inquiry, which is the right way to do it, by the way. 137 Democrats voted with the GOP against impeaching President Trump. Not one Republican for an inquiry. And what's happened is that the attempt to open up an inquiry of impeachment against President Trump failed miserably. So they created a new process that I think is very dangerous for the country. Instead of the judiciary looking at a potential impeachable offense, they created a process in the Intel Committee that's behind closed doors, doesn't provide access to the president's accuser, shuts Republicans out for all practical purposes, and is a unworthy substitute for the way you need to do it, is at its core un-American. And I can tell you what we did in the past. Let's go to 98. In 1998, in October, we had an impeachment inquiry vote on the floor of the House. I was there. 31 Democrats voted to open up an impeachment inquiry. And after that inquiry, these were the rights given to President Clinton, his team, and members of the minority. None of this exists today. What's going on is a runaround the impeachment process, creating a secret proceeding behind closed doors that fundamentally is, in my view, denies due process. And when you're talking about removing the President of the United States, it seems to me you'd want to have a process that is consistent with who we are as Americans and consistent with what Bill Clinton was allowed to do, Richard Nixon was allowed to do, and the process in the House today, I think, is danger to the future of the presidency. Because if you can drive down a president's poll numbers by having proceedings where you selectively leak information, where the president, who's the subject of all this, is pretty much shut out. God help future presidents. I've got 41 co-sponsors on the Republican side and climbing. And here's the request. If you believe you have a case against the president, vote to open up an inquiry, allow Republicans to have a say, make sure the president is allowed to participate in a meaningful manner like we did in the past. That's the way to do it. What you're doing today, in my view, is unfair to the president and is dangerous to the presidency. And I think 41 Republican senators and growing is a strong signal to our House colleagues that you're off script here. There's a way to do it, a right way and a wrong way, and you've chosen the wrong way. Yes, ma'am.
Your committee interviewed half a dozen people behind closed doors in your Russia investigation. Donald Trump Jr., Glenn Simpson, Robert Goldstone, and then you released the transcripts at the end.
I didn't interview any of these witnesses. That was pretty much intel. So
This
here,
is the judiciary.
yeah, this is what I'm saying. This is not an informal. We're looking at the Russian investigation. Mueller testified. So this was all about Mueller. So here's what happened. Ken Starr spent almost 5 years looking at Clinton. He came before the committee. We had an impeachment inquiry vote. Ken Starr put forth to the Senate Judiciary Committee the 11 allegations against President Clinton. We passed 4 articles of impeachment based on the Starr report that was transparent, subject to cross-examination in public. It was a public hearing, and 2 of those articles passed the House. What Mueller did was investigate the president for 2 years, spent $25 million, and did not recommend any action. That's the difference.
When it comes to impeachment messaging, it seems like the White House has changed course multiple times. At this point,
Have you noticed?
are you confident that you guys are on the same page? And is it the Hill now leading this messaging strategy?
So I talked to the Chief Staff Mulvaney. I think they're working on getting a messaging team together. You know, I was involved in impeachment of President Clinton. I know this sounds weird, but Clinton, look what he did. What he did is he had a team that was organized, had legal minds that could understand what was being said versus the legal proceedings in question, and they were on message every day. The President Clinton defended himself, but he never stopped being president. And I think one of the reasons that he survived is that the public may not have liked what the president had done, but believed that he was still able to do his job. And as he governed during impeachment, I think that was probably the single best thing he did, quite frankly, to avoid
Have you seen that
that.
case of the president?
I'm hoping that will become the model here.
Senator, you referred to Robert Mueller's investigation and Starr's investigation.
Yeah.
There is no prosecutor looking into the allegations that the combined House committees are looking into. Now, you were a prosecutor, sir. Would you ever have conducted an investigation in which your witnesses were allowed to speak in public and give other witnesses the opportunity to
That's
hear
actually a very good point. I mean, during the whole Mueller investigation, I backed off of calling a lot of the key witnesses because I didn't want to get in his lane. Now, I'm being asked by Republican folks out in the Republican world, why don't you call Adam Schiff? Well, I think that would do a lot of damage to the country for a senator to call a member of the House. You have a speech and debate problem. But if you think Adam Schiff is a fact witness, why isn't Donald Trump a fact witness? The point is, that's not a process that I think will withstand scrutiny. Durham is looking at potential misconduct about things that happened in 2016, particularly involving the Ukraine.
This isn't about 2016, Senator. This is about what the president has been doing with Ukraine along with his personal lawyer, and the Justice Department has declined to investigate.
So
what, I mean, there's no prosecutor looking into it. And So the House has to do the job of a prosecutor.
Well, here's what I would say. Are you suggesting there needs to be a special counsel for Ukraine? I think that's, well, here's what I've been trying to get a special counsel to look at all things 2016 from our side. Mueller gave the Trump campaign a pretty good, it is to me. Here's the process. Why did I support Mueller? To me, there was a conflict at the Justice Department. Why did I introduce legislation that you can only fire Mueller for cause? Because I thought it was important for the country for somebody outside politics to look at this. I think somebody outside politics should look at the things that I'm concerned about in 2016. You may not be, but I think the FISA warrant application could be considered a fraud on the court. We'll see from Horowitz. I'm not a prosecutor. So when it comes to whether or not somebody other than the House should look at Ukraine, I want to look at all things. Yeah.
Senator, you say this is a secret and illegitimate process. What do you
That's my view.
And so what do you say to the argument that 47 of your Republican House colleagues who serve on these committees, they have the right to be in there? It's not secret, it's not it's bipartisan.
I would say that if we pull this stunt, you'd be eating us alive.
Can I follow up?
Well, let me finish and let me tell you why. How many people have asked me about Bill Taylor's opening statement? All I can say is if we had Rudy Giuliani's opening statement and he said I did nothing wrong, I doubt if you would accept that. So 47 Republican House members feel like it's not working for them. They feel like that Volker's testimony has been selectively released. Radcliffe's cross-examination of Taylor is not available to you. So the people that you just named are as upset as I am. And here's what I would say. There's a way to do it. Give President Trump these rights that every other president, Nixon, Clinton, have had, and take a vote to allow the House to be on record authorizing this. This is a rogue action by a single committee of the House that has never done impeachment inquiries before, and I think it's dangerous to the presidency. Those 47 don't agree with you.
In the case of Richard Nixon, the House began its impeachment inquiry behind closed doors in October of 1973.
Did they have a vote of inquiry?
They did not have an impeachment resolution until months later in 1974. So it's similar to this.
Here's what I'm saying. Nixon eventually resigned. Peter Rodino designed the process. I remember the Watergate hearings very well. Jim Rogan, who was an impeachment manager with me during the Clinton impeachment, went up to meet with Rodino to try to find out how they did it. And Newt knows this better than I do. I think the American people were not with us on substance when it came to Clinton, but I do believe what we did very much mirrored the Watergate way of doing business. I remember the Watergate hearings. I don't remember any hearings in public about whether or not Donald Trump did something wrong in the Ukraine. And here's what, this is why Republicans are so frustrated. If we had done this to a Democrat, you'd be eating us alive. If we took an opening statement of a witness and said, there, doesn't that look bad? You'd want to know, well, did anybody question the witness? How did cross-examination go? So we believe that a lot of people want to get Trump and they don't give a damn about how they get him. I'm not telling you what he did or didn't do. I'm telling you what they're doing in the House is dangerous to the country.
What can you tell us about your lunch today with the president? What happened?
It was good. We had beef. So here's some news. We had a Situation Room briefing by General Milley about developments in Syria. There were 8 or 10 senators. There's a plan coming together from the Joint Chiefs that I think may work, that may give us what we need to prevent ISIS from coming back, Iran taking the oil, ISIS from taking the oil. I am somewhat encouraged that a plan is coming about that will meet our core objectives in Syria. As to the lunch, he felt like from the time he's become president, he's been hounded about things he didn't do. He feels like that it never ends, and that when it comes to Donald Trump, nobody really cares if he has a fair day in court but a handful of Republicans. I don't know what to tell him other than I told him every time he said Mueller was a witch hunt, which was like every day, I said I'm not going there because I actually know Mueller. And when I introduced the resolution making sure Mueller could not be fired unless there was cause, he didn't like that, but I said, Mr. President, I know you're frustrated. There's nothing worse than being accused of something you didn't do. It just eats away at your soul. And we made it through Mueller. We didn't do any real damage to the idea of nobody's above the law. I think Mueller had a really good opportunity to look at all things Russia and Trump. Now here we are again with the Ukraine. I've told you what I think about the phone call. To me, it's not an impeachable offense. I've got no problem with the phone call. But you got other people coming forward. You got the president of the Ukraine saying, no, there was no quid pro quo. All I am saying is that you tried an impeachment inquiry vote and you failed, and now you're creating a process in the Intel Committee that I think is Star Chamber-like and it needs to end.
Senator, if this goes, Senator, if the Senate ends up having to sit in a trial, how does a vote on something like this not totally taint the jury pool?
Well, if you think impeachment is a non-political event, you're wrong. There are court hearings in South Carolina. Let me tell you about the first one I ever had. I represented a guy for speeding. We went to the magistrate, we had a trial, and the magistrate was the highway patrol officer's uncle. That didn't go well. So what I am trying to say is at the end of the day, the Senate should be letting the House know that if you're going to continue this kind of process and it results in articles of impeachment, we do not consider this, in my view, I consider it to be out of bounds with what we've done in the past, void of basic due process. We're not telling the House you can't impeach the president. What we're telling the House, 41 of us, that there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And let me tell you about being a juror. I sat there for 5 weeks in the Senate, and a juror made a motion to dismiss. In a court of law, juries can't get up and say, I want to dismiss the case. So this is 1 part legal and 2 part politics. And what I'm trying to tell Republicans out there, that it is okay for the Republican Party to insist that Donald Trump be treated fairly. And a lot of senators are going to tell you, since I may be a juror, I don't want to comment on substance. But I'm hoping we can get most Republicans to comment on the idea that the impeachment proceedings as currently constituted in the House are unfair and dangerous. Yes, sir.
House Republicans used closed-door depositions prior to public hearings during the Clinton impeachment.
Yeah, right.
Why was it okay then, but you don't like it now?
In October of 1998, we authorized impeachment as a body with 31 members saying, do an inquiry. Some were behind closed doors, but the inquiry itself became very public. We had the Starr hearing to start it off with, but the president participated in a very meaningful way. So what's missing here is the House authorizing this inquiry. What's missing here is the 47 Republicans you talked about that are participating feel like it's not a fair process. They can't participate in a way that's meaningful. Yeah.
If the Senate had tried to interfere with the House impeachment process back in the 90s under Clinton, how would you have reacted?
I think if we were doing this, you'd be beating the shit out of us. I think if a Republican were doing to a Democrat what we're doing, you would be all over me. And I think it says a lot about people in your business, with all due respect. I am confident that if we had an Intel Committee inquiry involving a Democratic president where we selectively leak stuff, you would be calling us every kind of bad name and we would deserve it. So what I am saying is there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and this is a dangerous way to do it. One more question. Yeah. Yeah, we'll let you go.
Okay, just quickly right now, you're focusing a lot on the process. Democrats have made clear that they want to release the transcript and hold public hearings. Should the White House change its messaging once that?
So here's what I'm saying. What they're doing is selectively leaking information to drive the president's poll numbers down and to drive the momentum for impeachment up. Everything coming out of this Star Chamber process is being leaked by Democrats. They said, you heard Bill Taylor, I was breathless. Well, the point is, You don't know what Bill Taylor was asked. We don't know if he was cross-examined and what unfolded. So what you have here is a hearing, a process that is, to me, not sufficient for due process, is being used in a politically dangerous fashion. If you open up one of these things in the future against a Democrat, and we selectively leak things and we shut out the Democratic president from having a chance to participate, please use my words against us.
So thank you, Senator. I just wanted to follow up a little bit more on the lunch and in general the direction that you've gotten from the White House and from the president himself. Can you tell us a little bit more about what he'd like you to do? Is he supportive of this effort? Did he talk about being more aggressive on his behalf?
This is
and,
right.
And have you heard from him over the last 10 days or so that the witnesses have been coming out about his frustration?
Right, yeah. So he was in a good mood. He appreciated the lunch. He would like the process to be exposed for being basically unfair. He keeps telling us he did nothing wrong. He keeps telling me that the phone call was perfect. I'm saying, Mr. President, the phone call was okay with me. He feels like it never stops. That he's been in office, 3 years now, and every time he turns around, there's another reason that his family, his friends, he's got to pay legal bills, and that he feels like he doesn't have a real fair chance of being president of the United States. He thought it would be over with Mueller. And here's what I would say. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of Ukraine. I've got my own view about the letter. I'm not here to tell you that Donald Trump's done nothing wrong. I'm not here to tell you anything other than that the way they're going about it is really dangerous for the country, and we need to change course while we can in the House, because what's happening in the House, in my view and the view of at least 41 Republicans, it is not acceptable. Thank you.
All right, so there you have it. Senator Lindsey Graham lashing out about the process by which Democrats are moving forward with the impeachment depositions that they've been doing. A little bit of salty language tossed in there, so we apologize if anybody was offended by that. But obviously, there's a lot of passion and a lot of tension surrounding this issue. It's a monumental event to undertake the potential impeachment of a president of the United States. Lindsey Graham characterizing his lunch with the president, talking about the president's frustration about how all of this has gone, and he feels clearly under siege based on what was just shared with us by Senator Graham. He also did talk a little bit about the Syria process, and we're going to get back to General Keane in just a moment to get a little bit more feedback from him on what was said about that. But first, let's go to Mike Emanuel live on Capitol Hill as we continue to cover. And this is an explosive story, Mike, and the tensions are clearly running high. And there's sort of a call, I think, from Lindsey Graham to sort of give it a pause and a moment to make sure that this process is going forward in a way that's going to be understandable and transparent for the country.
No doubt about it, Martha. And so what you've heard is Graham and others making the case that the Democrats in the House should give President Trump the same rights that President Clinton and President Nixon have had, to be able to have their counsel in the room to hear these depositions, to take notes, to get the transcripts, and to be a part of the process. Democrats would say all that is coming. They intend to release transcripts in the coming weeks. They intend to do public hearings in the coming weeks. But there's a great deal of anxiety. Look at the calendar. We are, about a year out from the next election. The entire House of Representatives is on the ballot. A third of the Senate's on the ballot. And obviously the president is on the ballot. And so there's also that combustible aspect mixed in with all of this, making a lot of people very uneasy. The House members are looking at it saying, we may be asked to vote on impeachment before Thanksgiving or before Christmas, and we haven't seen much other than a 15-page opening statement from a 10-hour hearing.
Yeah, I thought he made some interesting points in terms of, as you pointed out, the president's counsel not being permitted to be present during these hearings, and that when people come out, you are hearing, because there's sort of selective leaks about what happened in there, and the Republicans feel like they can't say anything about what happened in there. Democrats seem to be a little bit more open about what they want to share. But the suggestion by Senator Graham, and whether or not it's true remains to be seen, is that the jury pool is kind of being poisoned. The jury pool being the American public. public, that he doesn't like the way everyone's getting the information. He feels like it's unfair to the process as we move forward.
Well, yeah, and you may see poll numbers done by our people and others saying that the support for impeachment is going up based on selective leaks, and so Graham says that's very damaging to this president. It's unfair to him, and he's saying it's time to change the process now. Martha?
Yeah, and Democrats say that as they move forward, it's going to be very transparent. We're going to have public hearings, and all the transcripts will be released.
You bet.
So that's their side of the story. Thank you so much, Mike. Good to see you tonight.
My pleasure.
Today. I keep forgetting I'm on during the day. Anyway, so an international watchdog, moving forward with the Syria story that we've been discussing this morning, is now investigating if Turkey used illegal chemical weapons in the attack on the Kurds in Syria. We've seen some images coming out of the region of people, including young children,